Hello and welcome to the Digital Craft Festival. My name's Katie Honnor and I'm from madebyhandonline.com. Today I'm joined by makers from Craft Festival from Bovey Tracy and from Cheltenham. And the theme for our conversation is going to be storytelling through contemporary craft. We're going to be discussing the narratives in their work, the materials that they use and looking at how materials bring stories and create new ones. And we'll also be looking at how people make bespoke commissions and how customers can get involved in those and how some of the work is made. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jennifer Collier, who's a paper artist, and Suzanne Breakwell, who's also another paper artist, ceramicist Amanda Banham, Esther Smith, who makes amazing automata, jeweller Rachel Eardley, printmaker James Green, and paper artist Alix Swan. Can you hear us, Alix? Hi, Alix. So, Rachel, if I could start with you.
Yep.
When I see your work, I see many layers of stories because of the materials that you use and the stories that they bring. And they're holding stories already, but you're taking them somewhere else. So can you tell our audience who's watching today a little bit about your work and your processes?
Yeah, so I make jewellery from old coins. And so like you say, they've already kind of had a life. So it's quite nice. They're coins that could be sitting in a pot somewhere. And actually nowadays I get much shows and people turn up with like bags of old coins for me and pots and stuff. So of their coins. So it's really nice. So they've already, like you say, kind of got a story for me. I love that historical sort of background that they already have. And so they kind of have, they've got stories already like woven into them, and I see them like as illustrations, like the little imagery. So like the pieces I've got on, you don't know, there's quite a lot of different coins in there. There's about 11 different coins cut in that earring. And so I see them myself as little illustrations, and obviously somebody has designed them at one point. So I take them a bit further and cut them out and highlight that. And like with these pieces, I just actually made these today for a customer and a commission, pair of earrings, like, it's quite hard to see. So you've got the horse, which is an Irish horse, and these little reefs are Swiss coins, and then you've got a hare, and there's oak leaves that are cut from silver sixpences. So, you know, they start off like this. Old coin. Now my trusty saw, this is it. It's not a laser, it's these. and my saw. And yeah, so these earrings are for a girl's birthday from her mum, and she's a jockey. So with that, there's a story for her, you know, which is really nice. So they're making their own story together, like the mum and the daughter. So you've got the horse and the hare, 'cause she loves nature. And, you know, oak leaves, I think, you know, that's kind of all, it's sort of symbolic. They've all got symbolism a lot, you know.
And do you share those stories of the histories of the coins with your customers? So if they're not bringing a story to you, do you share that when you pass on the finished piece?
Yeah, so each piece, I haven't drawn that one, but because I've got nothing else to do, I draw each box that the jewelry comes in, and so that has got all the coins that I've used for like these earrings. Yeah. So you've got the history, so you'll have the dates the coins were minted and what country they're from, you know. So the story, again, there's sort of a story here. Yeah. So, you know, you can make up your own story. Yeah.
Brilliant. So maybe I could move to Jennifer here then, because I know, Jennifer, you very much got your audience at heart, and you are, again, you're creating a lot of work to commission and using your materials in a way to tell a story. Can you tell us about materials that you use and how that is communicated with the customer?
So with all of my work in my stitch paper sculptures, the original idea comes from the narrative of the paper. So this dress, for example, is dressmaking patterns, so it's a very obvious link. Sometimes I might have the papers for years before I actually use them, like this little bird box. Everyone loves a little ladybird bird book, and it was probably years before I realised what the function was going to be, and it's obvious that they would be a little birdhouse with a little book cover roof. So I have some that I do have a range in stock, but quite often people will specify, maps are always popular. So this is a map of Cheltenham, ready for the Contemporary Craft Fair in Cheltenham. So quite often people will send me their own papers or ask for me to source a paper, whether it's a map, whether it's books. Quite often it's people's own photographs. Sometimes it might be house deeds is probably the most exciting thing that I've worked with. People will send me their precious papers, and of course you keep these things and you're always trying to think what to do with them, and it's a shame to just have them in a box of keepsakes. So it's very often people will post me their papers. Lampshades at the moment are incredibly popular, because when you light them up it kind of lights up that narrative, and I've started stitching into them to add an extra layer of storytelling to my work.
So what do you want your audience to read and feel when they're looking at your work, Jen?
I think it's very much nostalgia. I try not to spell out the narrative of the work too much. What I like is somebody to see something and they might go, oh, I recognise that stamp, or I visited that place on that postcard, a place on a map. It's shocking the amount of serendipity. For example, the first time I'd work in Country Living magazine, someone emailed and said, oh my gosh, that let address, my mum used to live at that address. And for me, that's what I love, is people making their own connection without me trying to spell it out too obviously, but people connect to different things in a different way and create their own little narratives and stories about my work.
Okay. James, can I ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into printmaking?
Sure. Yeah, well, I got into printmaking about 16 years ago. Previous to that, I did a fine art degree, and I don't know, I just didn't really click with anything at all. I didn't even try printmaking, but nothing seemed to work. But then 16 years ago, somebody lent me some lino cut tools, and I had a go, and I did a picture of my cat, and I was instantly gripped by this process. I absolutely loved doing it. It was, it's essentially like potato printing, I suppose, but a slightly more elaborate version of that. But it was, the process is as much fun as the end result, I think. And that's what got me started. And essentially that's all I've been doing ever since, is making lino cut prints and screen prints, and my work has sort of developed, through the process.
And I've seen there's a donkey that featured. There's got to be a story about the donkey.
There's quite a lot of donkeys. It's nothing I necessarily planned initially, but 11 years ago I did a print of some donkeys in a meteor shower. It's a slightly odd idea, but I just wondered what donkeys would do if they're in a meteor shower. And the ones in my picture just looked a little bit confused and just sort of stood there looking a little bit odd and awkward. But there was something about the atmosphere and the donkeys that made me want to do more and more donkey pictures. And it made me think that then donkeys are not really celebrated very much. They're a bit undervalued, in art and in life generally. So I felt like maybe it was my place to celebrate and champion them. So yeah, for the last 11 years, I've been, alongside my other prints, I've been doing lots and lots of donkey prints too.
And in your other prints, are you focusing on any particular themes?
I do landscapes. I live in Sheffield, and I do, I started off doing pictures of Sheffield, and I've spread out to the coast. I've got one here of Robin Hood's Bay that I did fairly recently. Don't know if you can see that. And yeah, other places, St Ives, I did one of fairly recently as well. This one. And I also do other wildlife as well. I feel like my work is sort of in 3 categories: landscape, wildlife, and donkeys. The donkeys is a slightly more abstract thing. If you look at my work, the donkeys exist in this place that there's no one to bother them or hassle them, and they're just having lovely adventures doing their own thing.
why not?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you. Can you tell us where people can buy your work at the moment?
I sell my work mostly on folksy.com. I've got an online shop there. I have an Etsy shop as well. There's not quite as much stuff there, but it's everything else I've got in my folksy shop.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
I can see Mary Poppins, so I just wanted to bring Alix in here. Alix, can you tell us a little bit about Mary and how she's made and why you've made her?
Well, I've always wanted to make a flying Mary Poppins, and for ages I couldn't work out quite how I was going to do it. But she starts off as a paper doll, so this is the skeleton of the doll, and then I build around that to adding different bits depending on what kind of is the doll that I'm making. So with Mary Poppins, most people think that they're made of paper mache, but it's all manipulated paper. So with her dress is a piece of newspaper, and then the apron that she has is made from a cotton dress, a vintage cotton dress, and her coat and her hat and her bag are all made from felt. And then her hair is made from rags, which I stitch over on the sewing machine. And then my favourite part from her is her secret hidden music box, which is in her carpet bag, which plays a spoonful of sugar.
Wow! So, where does that come from? Does it come from your childhood, the way you're drawn to fairy tales?
Yeah, I mean, it's all sort of that memory of reading stories, and I've always, well, my mum would say that I've been doing it the whole of my life since I could pick up a pencil. I've drawn things, cut little things out, made storyboards, little books. So it's just kind of progressed from there, really, and then it all just sort of came together, I guess, at the end of my MA, which I finished in 2007.
Okay, and if I can just move to Esther, because Esther, I know you're someone who uses fairy tales sometimes in your work.
Yeah, I do. The most obvious one that I've based a fairy tale on is this one right next to me, handily. Hope you can see that. I'm going to turn the handle. That is Little Red Riding Hood, and you should just be able to see the wolf hiding at the back there. I absolutely love Grimm's fairy tales. I like the darkness of them. I like the darkness of woods as well as all the nature and the wildlife, so this is perfect. But also, I have 2 daughters, and this one has a little moral: stick to the path. And I think being the mother of 2 girls is quite an important thing to remember. But it's also about the temptation of what's beyond the path, isn't it? And a lot of my work is also based on nature. So it's got everything. There's a little owl, there's a wolf, there's the trees, there's the flowers, and a little girl trying to just steer her course through it all.
And you also create one-off pieces, is that right?
I do, yes. Yeah, so this is something I make things just because I enjoy making them. So I've always liked stories, and Automata are it's a brilliant medium to tell a little bit of a story in. So some of the things that I make are just things that I think up. And one of my very first pieces was just a man taking his dog for a walk. That was called, I don't have one, but that was called Midnight Ramblers. It's got a little moon, little dog, and the dog's owner. And lots of people saw that and kind of went, oh, wouldn't it be nice if Benji could be in that? So I do very often make adapted versions of something like that with specific dogs in mind. So I'm getting to know all sorts of breeds of dogs because I'm not a dog owner. But I've done mini Dachshunds, I've done Schnauzers. I was working on Border Terriers yesterday. so yeah, I've discovered that Google is a fantastic method of searching images for all sorts of dog breeds.
Okay, so how can people find you then if they want to?
I've got a website.
Go to the website.
So it's just, what is it? Esther Smith, www.estersmith.co.uk, and there's a page on there that tells you all about having a piece commissioned, so a personal automata. And it doesn't just have to be dogs. Yeah, today's one was dogs, but I've done one in the past that had an African grey parrot in, done some with hens, horses. There's a definite animal theme, but I'm willing to have a go at most things, really.
Brilliant, thank you. It would be great to talk a little bit about people bringing other stories, a bit like Esther's customers bringing their pets. I know that when you have an object that's important to you because someone's given it to you, you're bringing your own story to it as a customer. So this ring here is made by Helen Noakes, a jeweler. I've always loved Helen's work, but my husband gave this to me in the middle of a parcel, so that's my extra layer of a story to it. I've also got a lovely one of your brooches, much loved brooch, Alix, my magic wand brooch, which was given to me by a lovely friend. And so Suzanne, if I could ask you, because I know that you have collectors who buy your work, but you also have customers who come to you because they want you to capture something for a very special occasion, and you create something bespoke, or you might have already made it and they present it in a way that is special. Can you give us an example of something like that where you've worked really closely with a customer?
Absolutely. It's one of my favourite ways of working, actually, just to sit down and have a conversation with a customer, and just sort of just create a story between us. I'd give an example of a customer who wanted a piece made for, it was coming up for a first year wedding anniversary, which of course is paper. And this gentleman was a writer, so he wanted to include some of his work into a piece for his wife. So we just, we were on Twitter and we chatted. We spent the evening sort of chatting about what that would look like and what that would be. And in the end, it was a little Lynette bird for his wife, and she was completely thrilled with it. And I absolutely adore making one-off bespoke pieces like that. That's my favourite thing to do.
Okay, so how would people contact you then? You said that was Twitter. How else can people find you, especially during this time?
I've got a website as well, SuzanneBreakwell.com. I'm on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. So yeah, just type in my name, you'll find me.
What drew you to working with paper, especially, Suzanne?
I found the medium really, really interesting. I originally did a degree in film and theatre set design. When I was a little girl, I was just always working with paper, basically. And I really enjoyed the model making side of things. But actually, one of my big inspirations for working with paper it's a really funny story. Basically, really gloomy year of news, terrible, really awful. And I just had this sort of complete desire to turn that terrible news into something a little bit more beautiful. So out of all these bits of newspaper, I started making loads and loads of peace lilies. And I'd leave them in places in Brighton. I was just like leaving them in cafes or giving them.
We lost you there, Suzanne. Can you say that bit again? We lost you then.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
In Brighton, is that? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just leave peace lilies around, and then my friends would give me books that they'd find, maybe missing a cover or pages in there, and I'd start to make. I'd look at the text, I'd make that work relevant to the text. So a friend of mine gave me like a really knackered Haynes manual, and I started making little gears and bits like that out of it. I mean, my personal love, what I love to make is nature-inspired paper sculpture, and I really love the way the words, you know, go beyond the book and turn into that 3D sculpture. They lend themselves to almost like carrying on the narrative of something that was, you know, that maybe has seen better days and been left in a charity shop.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to bring Amanda in here. You've been sat quietly waiting. Can you tell us a bit about your yourself? Do you create your work in order to tell specific stories? I'm looking at the houses behind you. Is it that you've got ideas about people who might live in them, or who you're passing them on to?
Yes, I'm Amanda, and I obviously make ceramic houses, which I raku fire, which is an outdoor firing, which I do in my garden. I started making them because I really like telling stories. I actually started making the houses because when my daughter was very small, we've got 2 dogs now, but we had 1 dog then, and she didn't used to want to come for a walk in the afternoon with the dogs. So I would say to her, we live in a really lovely old market town called Saffron Walden, and there's a road called Castle Street, and the road has lots of really old Tudor timber frame houses which all overhang over, like they look impossible, like they're going to fall over into the street. But the brilliant thing about Castle Street for a 4-year-old child is the windows are really, really low down, and so you can easily see in the houses and see what everybody's doing. So I would say to her, let's go and have a look in the windows of Castle Street. And we would walk up Castle Street and peer in and see, and then I would make up stories about the people of Castle Street and tell her what they, you know, like just make up what they were having for tea or what they were watching on television or things like that. And then I started making ceramic houses, and immediately I started making up stories which I posted on Instagram about the people who live in the houses, and they're always just, I don't know, just it's all, I literally think of them off the top of my head when I'm sitting in the kitchen in the evening and my husband cooks dinner and I'm just sitting there just looking at a house and just thinking, oh right, I know the people that live in there, and I know, and they, oh my goodness, but I think that he's going to run off with the man or lady that lives in the house next door, and it all just becomes this. And I've done a couple of like serials on Instagram where I did it for a whole week, and there was a different like installment every night, and had just got loads. And one day a craft fair, a lady came up to me and said, I missed the last installment, what happened? So I was like, I can't remember, because also I've probably moved on to another story by then, so I just can't remember. But yeah, and I make house commissions for people of their own houses. And quite often I'll be asked to write. So one example that springs to mind was a house where the man wanted to have it made for his wife for a surprise, and he wanted me to write a story about her and her, like, so he told me loads and loads of things about her, which I'm not sure she was particularly thrilled that I knew all this stuff. But anyway, and I had to write a story about the lady that lives in this house. I'm not going to spill all of her details, but yeah. So I had to write a story about her. So that quite often happens as well. So
do you send the story to the customer as well then with the work?
Yeah, and whenever I do an online sale, all of my houses have stories with them on my online sale, and we print off all the stories, and they all go with. It's only like, you know, 3 or 4 lines. I don't write a book for everyone, but they all go off with the houses. So I don't do that with the houses that go from galleries, because it would just be, I'd just spend my whole life writing stories. But yeah, but on my online sale, that's one of the, I've got people that collect houses, and they like, what they collect them is like partly, especially because they have the stories that go with them as well. So Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, I've asked lots of questions. It'd be great if any of you had questions for one another on our theme.
I want to know, Rachel, how you got the idea of cutting out coins.
Well, I used to make very different jewellery. I used to like make miniature kitchen utensils and handbags and shoes, stuff like that, sort of like charms. And one day I thought, I really don't like doing this. You know, we spend a lot of time, don't we, doing our work. So it's nice to really love what we do. And I'd collected coins that I liked the imagery on from just car boots and stuff. And I just started playing about with them and just started cutting them up. And then it just sort of happened like that. But it's interesting, since doing it, I've realised obviously coins are actually a very traditional material to use for jewellery. So yeah, it's actually historically they've always been used. So you know, quite political. Suffragettes used to use coins and things like that. During the war, coins were used a lot in jewellery, Roman jewellery, stuff like that. So yeah, I'm not the first, but I like to think I'm doing it in my own way.
Yeah, definitely.
And so you're not following a particular theme then, Rachel? Is it more? It's more that when you've combined your different elements from the different coins, does that then bring a story? You're not, or do you start with something in mind and then you're bringing the pieces together that fit that? Or
yeah, I just see them as imagery. So like I've got this one, which is hold on. So it's where's my pic? There we go, camera. So it's like you can see on it, it's got the curtains, so it already looks like a theatre design, doesn't it? So that is from the 1800s, this outer bit, the silver bit, and then the little birds inside are from a South African coin. So it just naturally lends itself, like the imagery I see is already there. And then I just, you know, because I just see them as pictures really, and then they've become jewellery. So yeah.
Fantastic. And Esther, I wanted to ask you if you could tell us a little bit more about a particular commission that you've worked on with somebody, where maybe the materials have led you in a way that you didn't expect, or ended in a way that was a surprise.
I'm not sure I do that.
Okay, so
I'll tell you about the materials, but I usually have a plan
right
I stick to.
Yeah.
What will change is the colours and the texture possibly, but I think possibly because I'm using copper a lot, if you don't have a reasonable plan to start with, it could go horribly wrong.
Yeah.
But I'm going to show you, this is one of my first automatas that I made. It's on a little pile of books. And this is a self-portrait. This is me. And when I made it, my youngest daughter, was a toddler. So there's a little toddler. Well, it's actually more like a baby. So when I made this, I was working at Falmouth University doing a lot of dyslexia support. So this was a visual thinker. This was about, I did a lot of work to do with visual thinking. So all of this stuff along the top here were thoughts buzzing around my head. So there's a cake, there's a little boat, because I live in Cornwall, there's lots of boats around here. A book, because I love to read, and it's all about stories. And I collected the books. I had quite a struggle finding books small enough, actually. And these have been drilled all the way through to make a plinth for the piece. But somebody up in Glasgow saw this at an exhibition and got in touch, and their wife is a writer. So I did another version of this, and it had an old-fashioned typewriter and lots of things to do with her. She lives in Glasgow, but she looks after foxes, so there were lots of foxes. There was a representation of one child, but apparently the foxes were more important than the children. So one child, not the three that she has. I hope they're not watching and know who they are. So yeah, and because she was a writer, they just wanted a little pile of dictionaries. But normally I use copper, and what I do look out for, what these have on the bottom, is little bits of hardwood. So this is all reclaimed hardwood. This one's a little boat, and the hardwood has come from a boat builder. So I managed to get hold of the offcuts, because obviously with any kind of woodwork there's always tiny offcuts, which are just perfect for me. So that's actually Cornish oak that came from a boat, an offcut from a boat, and it's now the base of a little automata about boats. There's also a little bit of tin on there, reclaimed tin, just the gunnels, top of the boat, and the flag, and those are from sardine tins, so another little reference to boats. But otherwise I'm mainly using copper.
Oh, they're wonderful. Lots and lots of depth. And do you just collect the materials as you go then and save?
Yep. Sardine tins are never thrown away. And I'm always on the lookout for wood, so can't go to the beach without looking at my feet and looking for bits of driftwood. I've got a friend up in Scotland that lives just at the mouth of the River Spey, and you get loads of amazing wood come down the Spey. So she has given me some beautiful big chunks of it. They're brilliant for larger pieces. But quite a lot of driftwood is quite damaged, and they need a little bit of weight, these. So the hardwood works really well.
Okay, thank you. Just going to move a slightly different direction here to talk about collaborations, because I know, James, you've been working on something where you're working with another maker. Can you tell us a bit about the story behind that?
Yeah, sure. Well, in fact, last year I did a collaboration with Andy Poplar, who is otherwise known as Vinegar and Brown Paper. He etches into glass and all sorts of other items. He uses text on his work. Very, very clever stuff. And I've known Andy for years now. And last year we made some mirrors for Bobby Tracy. Made a couple of mirrors which had some of my donkeys on and some text which said, what did it say? Something to do with, we are all wonky on the inside. That was it.
Perfect.
We had a chat more recently, and we said, well, why don't we do something else? And he had this phrase which he gave me. I was like, okay, that would work. Again, donkey related, so right up my street. So we did a print this time, and he's got a letterpress machine. So he letterpressed the text and sent the piece over to me, and then I put two lino cut donkeys on it. I can show you the print, which is there. So yeah, so we've just done that now, and it's going to be released on Sunday via Andy's website, Vinegar and Brown Paper website, and £10 from every sale will go to Minds charity as well, the mental health charity. So yeah, so that was a good collaboration. You know, I love working with other people, and you know, especially people that you like and you respect their work as well. It's fantastic. It sort of makes the whole community thing worthwhile for me.
Thank you. Yeah, is there anyone else then who's done some collaborative work that they want to share with us, working with another maker?
I've done quite a few over the years. Most recently worked with Virginia Graham on a ceramic tea set. So she's a ceramicist. So it was actually my bits of stitch and papers, found papers that we scanned, made into transfers, and then she fired them onto her ceramics. So it kind of captures the essence of both of our work. And also recently worked with Helen Noakes from Your Ring, and we worked on some jewellery pieces where I was given her, with this, it was my bits of scrap, bits that kind of were too small or I didn't know what to do with, and she actually encapsulated them in absolutely beautiful jewellery pieces. And it's just quite nice, people reimagining your work in a different way. And for me, because all of mine is scrap paper. It's really nice that even the tiniest little bits are getting reused and recycled, and somebody else can give them a new life.
So has anybody got any more questions about storytelling? Any strands of our conversation that you want to ask one another rather than me? Not especially.
I think what's interesting is that we've all got strands that kind of run in different ways. So some of us it is the materials and the recycling, whereas other people it's very much the story at the forefront, and the narrative comes first. I know with me I don't always know what the narrative is, and I have to go away and think about it until it becomes obvious. And I think it's been quite interesting to hear things people have said. For example, I've known Rachel's work for years, probably known the textile work and the screen prints better, but I didn't realise that they weren't just one coin, that they were all put together. So I feel like I've learned quite a lot listening to people talk about their practice and how it kind of comes together and comes about.
Okay. So I don't know where that's coming from. Right? So, okay, I just want to finish off our discussion about storytelling with a bit of a different question for you. So, saying money's no object then, and we're at a craft festival, or you're looking online, what would you buy? If I was buying something for you, Amanda, what would you be drawn to?
Well, I bought last year at Craft Festival a piece of Helen Noakes' jewellery, which
Helen,
this is turning into the Helen Noakes show now. But I tell you another thing that I would definitely buy, which I really, really, really coveted for the whole of Craft Festival last year because they were on the stand behind me, was one of Holy Smoke's dogs. And they are just, if money was no object, the one I wanted was £300, and I was trying to work out how I could smuggle that into the house without my husband realising it was rather expensive. But yeah, that's what I would really, really, really love, is one of Holy Smoke's lurchers.
Perfect. Suzanne, what about you?
I'd second that actually with Holy Smokes.
Oh, okay.
Just wonderful. I love the way she captures just that momentary expression, and just so beautifully, and the material itself is just so well put together. Yeah, I love them. And Helena Sharpley's work, absolutely love. So really playful and illustrative, but and it's that 3D sculptural. Wonderful picture going on.
I wonder if some people don't realise that with your work you've got a wire armature underneath. So again, you've picked some people who use wire there and who are sculpting, but you're doing the same with your work, and the papers going around the armature. Is that...
Absolutely, yeah. And behind me, I don't know if you can see quite a large sort of rabbit head. Maybe I should bring it down actually. But this is a sort of an example of a structure that I would start with. So it's got quite a lot of detail in it, really, and then it's all hidden. Why do I do that? I don't know. But actually, when you were talking about collaboration, I did a lovely collaborative project with Marna Lunt, who is just the most amazing textile artist. And she took some of my framework and actually threaded bits of thread and material all through. I've actually got some of it upstairs. I can run up and get it if you want to have a look. If that's but yeah, absolutely brilliant. Really love her work, and she just changed what that was so much. Yeah, really brilliant.
And they're so beautiful. That and the armature you make, amazing. Even to start with, that's stunning.
Yay!
Yeah.
Thank you.
Alix, can you tell us what you would be particularly drawn to if I was to say I would purchase you something online or at the craft festival? What would you go for?
Well, there's a lot of things, beautiful stuff, always at the craft festival, and you're always sort of deciding, well, can I get this one or that one or anything? But probably although you don't see her at places like Crafts Festival, but Julie Arkell is a maker that I've followed since I was a student, and I suppose I'd love to have one of her dolls, just because there's just so it gave me so much inspiration as a student, and then there's just so much story and detail within the pieces that they are. So I'd love a piece of her work, I think.
Interestingly, that was about to be my answer. She's someone who's really supported my practice throughout my 21 years now. Whenever she sees me at shows, comes and chats, been really, really supportive. And I'm incredibly proud to say that actually we're showing her work at my gallery at the moment, Unit 12, which is incredible that she's agreed to give me her work, because it is very hard to get hold of. And not surprisingly enough, it's almost sold out. So if you want one, get in quick, Alix.
Okay, Esther, is there anything you've got your eye on?
Yes, it's outside of the Craft Festival though. It's an automata maker. There's a chap that lives not far from here called Carlos Zapata that makes the most amazing wooden automata, and loads and loads of stories behind those. So that's what I would go for. Anything that moves, anything with a little mechanical movement.
Okay, Richard, James.
It's all right. It's all right. I can think of a couple of people. I mean, from the Craft Festival, Von Allen's Heartfelt Dogs. I'd really like one of them.
Yeah.
I think they're amazing. I just find them so funny to look at, and they're lovely little clothes and shoes and bags and satchels and trousers and things, and funny little dog. Also, well, not at the festival, but Tom Kemp, the ceramicist. I really love something by him. Some sort of, he makes porcelain vessels that have got these big sort of splashes of colour on them, like one colour. I absolutely love his stuff. But yeah, it's not cheap, but I do love it. But every time I see it online, it's all sold out straight away, so I'm never quick enough anyway. So, but I'll have one of them, please.
Okay, I'll see what I can do. And Rachel.
I'm so bad with names, but there's a lovely woman who's it was going to be her first year at Bovey obviously this weekend. Her name is Sigrid, but I'm not sure of her surname, but she makes amazing dresses, and they're just so beautiful. Like simple, but the attention to detail is just stunning, and amazing. The insides are as beautiful as the outsides. Yeah, but also Julie Arkell, I mean, she's just amazing. So do you do own arts though?
Oh, for you, definitely.
Actually, one from own arts.
Actually, interestingly, we have got quite a few people with hers paying in instalments, which bigger pieces is absolutely, makes it a bit more manageable.
Exactly.
Going back to the donkey thing, I really like the donkey gen that Julie had in your exhibition.
Yeah, it's beautiful. with the knitted shadow. Yeah,
I adore that.
I'll have to send James a picture. He will love it.
Yeah, I absolutely adore that.
He's a genius. But that's the great thing about Bovey, about doing fairs as well, isn't it? It is a moment when we're in a pretend world and we buy each other's work, because suddenly we're like, oh, I've got some money. Yeah, I can buy that. So, I love that about shows, you know.
Can I just say I want a bit of everybody's work now that I've had a closer look and heard more about it. I'm going to have to make a new list.
Okay, so we've had a little break and we're back now as Suzanne has something to show us.
I do indeed. I thought I'd just show you part of the collaborative work that me and Mana did together. And really fantastic because she was able to sort of add so many details but still keep original features from the wire work. So we've got the owl as well, where she kept some of the wire showing and add these beautiful stitched feathers on as well. Just absolutely unique. Just had to show you. Just had to.
And I would like to show you a commission that I had to make during lockdown, which was this hospital. Which is made for a nurse who is working with COVID patients in in a hospital in London, and I've still got it now because she hasn't been able to take delivery of it because she's at work in a hospital in London and doesn't want to have post and things to worry about. But she has got quite a lot of my work already, so she's I think she's going to be stocking up, but we'll see. And also during lockdown, I made houses that I made homeschools, and I made some shops which I called the Stay-at-Home Cafe, which was very popular. And I made a whole high street of shops which you can see on Instagram, because everyone was missing just popping down the shops. So trying to cheer everyone up.
Wonderful. And Esther, you made something as well during lockdown.
Yeah. This is my self-isolating garden with no people in it because we're all indoors. But I have spent a lot more time in the garden than I usually would, and really enjoyed having a bit of extra time to do some gardening. So I also have a plan to make another piece, which is going to be called not FaceTime, that exists, Fence Time, because I've had so many conversations over fences as a way of getting around the lockdown and actually communicating with people occasionally. So that's the first one. It's going to be followed by Fence Time.
Wonderful.
With people in.
Okay, so just going to finish off now with Alix. I wanted to ask you if you could tell us what your favourite story is.
So I don't have a favourite story, as it's always the one that I'm working on at the time, and it moves on each time because there's just so many stories and I love them all. But the most influential story for me is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, because the first paper doll I ever made when I was doing my degree got known as Alice, and that started me looking at the story. And then all my final pieces for my degree are all based on that story. But it always seems to be a reoccurring theme within my work. So the latest piece that I made to do with that is this little house, which is the White Rabbit's house. And because I love playing around with what the book form is, so you open up the house and then there's an illustration and a quote from the story. So it's all the bit about when she's getting too big for the White Rabbit's house and her legs pop out and her head pops out and things.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you everyone for coming, and for people at home who are watching. We would love to encourage you to go onto the Digital Craft Festival website and find all of our makers' contact details, so the makers who are here now and everybody who takes part in the Bovey and Cheltenham shows. Thank you very much for joining us at the Digital Craft Festival. Bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.